I'm allowed to move it? That's my question. Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. Maybe I could move it.
Segue reading series. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. First with Jessica, then with Jillian. So see you in 5. Hi, welcome back. We're going to start the first reading, and to introduce Jessica Laser, I'm going to introduce Cecilia Stelzer, who's the co-editor at Roof. Cecilia?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I just wanted to say, for those of us joining on Zoom, there is a link to donate. It's $5 and it goes directly to the readers, so please do that if you haven't already. I'm so excited to welcome Jessica Laser today. Her book, Planet Drill, which was the inaugural winner in 2019 of Future Poems Other Futures Award, begins with the poem Invitation, a brief 3-line poem that I'll read for you now. Policemen tell them war is different. You can leave without paying. Can you live without pain? Jessica Laser's poetry is contradictory and shifting. It's like we are seeing the sentences from the corner of our eyes, and once we turn to look, the shape has changed. Her work moves between rooting and unmooring, representing and abstracting, stating and questioning. Sometimes these shifts happen line by line, and other times they happen poem by poem. There is always a fragile play of comprehensibility and expectation. When I read Jessica's work, I feel like I'm part of a psychological test or experiment with morphing faces and numbers. There's, quote, glassware everywhere, refracted crystal millions. My lungs have shattered, panting questions curiosity yields, constellates, a state pursued by contradiction, unquote. At times, I feel frustrated because I'm not sure if I'm passing the test. And I wonder if Jessica is giving me the test, if she has the answers. But I know that she's also taking the test with me, and that the answer is to simply sit in the room with her. You can spot her in the room in poems like Trait, which reads, "I'd like to maim my child Jessica. A portrait does violence to nobody else. I want her to be over-architect, an arch where not throughs my youth." Elizabeth Willis notes in her blurb for Planet Drill, "In their dizzying play between surface and depth, Jessica Lazar's poems take on a vertiginous, disorienting power. Their tightly wound syntax blasts a sound akin to prophecy piped in from a place I can't yet name. Lazar's work asks us to give up control. We are cut loose, displaced." Lazar elaborates on this concept in her interview with Canadian poet and critic Rob McLennan on his blog. There, she notes, "Poetry seemed to me the medium best able to release rhetorical arguments' fantasy of control by weaving itself of contradiction, by privileging how we actually feel over how we feel we should feel." Through this release of control, her work, although at times self-referential, feels like a sort of discomposed mirror on us, the readers, while our own memories and impulses congeal Lazar's charged abstractions. This mirror also reflects back our own preconceptions of poetry, language, meaning. When we lose our expected connectors, what is conveyed both on the page and within ourselves? In addition to Planet Drill, Jessica Lazar is also the author of Segue Kuzmich from All Sides, Letter Machine Editions 2019, and various chapbooks. A graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop, she has taught writing at Brown University, University of Iowa, Parsons School of Design, and elsewhere. She's currently a PhD student in English at UC Berkeley. Please join me in welcoming Jessica Lazar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Cecilia, that was so wonderful. Thank you so much. I actually felt quite seen by that introduction in a very unique way. So thanks, everyone, for being in the room with me and taking the test. I'm going to start with a couple poems from Planet Drill. This is called Carry and Comfort. I am the very sickness of my mouth. All March, mowing around beliefs called by some a home, by me, April's coming anyway. Let it be rose-themed and theme-colored so the roses match. All month it's been March. The sky breathes its pen, beckons the enclosure over, the human vapor, the air of it now around, clouds sing over, and louder than, Olympian dialect. I thought I heard mist. So children, laughing, echo information. Let's stir this house above the garland and start the ocean where it melts and meet the horizon and draw fate from its basin. Too much to dawn on. Houses surface instead, town willing, to shed wide skin you feel against your own failed field, feed someone. This next poem is called The Noble Rider, just continuing my direct reference in the titles of these poems. The Noble Rider. Whose BMX is this? Propped beside the dumpster with one popped tire. Bad for the key to pull it from the lock. When I open the lid, I smell the old rotary phone, pogo sticks, yet the other fly, can't save, has died. Goodbye. See you soon. Tomorrow. Perhaps the lucky ones lost everything controllable and no longer have impulses. People get two, women say, privileges, and I two flies. A fly dying, to be a fly. What else is a person to say? People crack the same together, wrenching. Who will crack with me when you are experimental, playing a pedal, fearing your finger numbed forever from touching over and over a taut string? The bow goes, I brought a snow globe from Tel Aviv to an ornamental mantle in NYC with a camel and desert and no snow, gold glitter sandstorm to shake here. You are bad, unreasonable. I am your receptacle, say the fires I believe in, and they in me. Do we ruin or no? I know I only brought you chairs. There was not a place to lean against the fire, but a log. Listen, you've exhausted me, the pair of you. I don't live in their house, neither do you in ours. Let's walk out onto the golf course. I have to catch you, tell you the latest, at least that I've been gone. You're right here, and he's been gone. He's been with you. Our friend is dead, and you are playing outside when I leave in a few hours tomorrow for the same task, watching the bike lean, all out of owners who may have been small or routine. But since I've not seen a million men riding, knees raking the squall, I have thought those men alone since no one raised their seats, or keeping low to be unseen, or come unfixed because the blame leaps off them that's holding them at the end of the night. Hi, Jesse. Okay, for some newer work, this is called The Book. I pulled out the book in horror. I thought the book the one I meant to leave you after dinner, that in my haste I must have taken it with me with my things. When I got home, it was another, one you hadn't given me, that felt to my hand like one I'd give you back, but with a different cover. Small, tight book in which we write our failure, submission, such a violent book. That's when I get by, a girl, guided by one, to a rhinestone. She pulls out a mirror. She knows what violences are. I put her book inside my book to save my place. Between my real lives, I loved to live this one, safe beneath the symptom, shaded by the sycamore, more word than tree. Now I'm going to share a brief series titled For Canonical or Canonical Adjacent White Men. Thomas Jefferson. I said I was a horse because I like to be compelled. You said it when you called, adulthood, learning, to live according to your values. Could you have a value that says it is my value to have values that do not conflict? A horse just carries obedience gracefully, like that one choice you made without deliberating. Thomas Jefferson invented the swivel chair, apparently, desiring to build all sides of an argument into a piece of furniture. And even if, with that reading, I wouldn't at first agree, I could see swiveling my way there. I said I was a horse, but of course, I was a chair. And the chair I was is the horse I will be. That's how I get all the legs I need. Who hasn't once or twice said the wrong thing? Who hasn't said something right? Sometimes the right words lag behind you, and you are their horse for a season. For a season, you are their transportation. William James. As I enter the station, my first heart stops. I begin chopping the foot of a tree. Its branches are unmoved by my act. Its leaves murmur. Peacefully as ever, I do violence to the foot of a man. I hear the conductor calling all aboard. If I stumble as I run, if a cinder enters my eye, I enter the station. The conductor calling all aboard stops my first heart, stopping my second heart beating the foot of a tree, the foot of a man. I hear violence calling, its branches unmoved. They are moved, I insist. This one's called Edward Thomas. Edward Thomas has this poem, popping off here. Edward Thomas has a poem called Roads, and the first line of it is, "I love roads," which I just think is hilarious. So I wanted to use that in a poem. I'm honestly not sure I succeeded, but it's finished, so. Edward Thomas, sometimes I read you for anger, to see in your face the confines of a medium. What wouldn't I think to be a thought in your head? The youngest and most beautiful love no one, but still I love everyone I've loved. I love roads. Unlike a governmental body, mine can be shot in the street, in the broad daylight of democracy. I'd leave this country, but democracy loves me. Okay, done with the canonical white men. This is called The Goner School. We did dangerous and stupid things. Were dangerous and stupid, ignorant and arrogant. We did things we saw people do. Saved by what we didn't know could happen. We were just getting young, caught, dangerous, and stupid, with our educations written all over us, our huge, expensive educations. We were so caught up in danger and stupidity, with our big, empty eyes, our stupid, heavily lined eyes, our energies, eyes with the stakes emptied out of them. Night diner fluorescence our youth was caught in the glare of. I had a hot chocolate. The boys had omelets. You could dim us. We wept and fasted, wept and prayed, and our periods came. Actually, we were pregnant. We had sex like a dictionary. We wanted to be other, for others were better than we were to ourselves. With our stupid eyes and bigger mouths, we were pregnant with ourselves. In the water tower, at the makeup counter, we were bitchy and hungry and blamed other women, our youth caught in their glare. By pissy trucks and passing grain, we drove dangerously, stupidly. Unto passing trucks who honked, we did danger and left nothing out. Sun caught their windshields as we passed, speeding each toward more Midwest, a place I didn't know I was from. Until trees spit moss and Shasta loomed and hot springs waited for the time we'd go. I always said what kind of person I was. I was that kind of person. Okay, I just have one more, but it's a bit longer. Now that I've brought us to the West Coast, this poem is called Berkeley Hills Living. And it has an epigraph from Alan Watts, The Way of Zen, which says, "This is not virtue in the current sense of moral rectitude, but in the older sense of effectiveness, as when one speaks of the healing virtues of a plant." It's in sections, and I won't indicate that as I read. Berkeley Hills Living. Eliot's window, the glorified hallway that served as his room, his bed with one pillow. Another night, it was raining too hard to drive home, and his bed had two, because a woman had visited. Eliot and Dana talked upstairs while I slept to the cadence of their voices through the ceiling. When I woke, I put on my jeans. From his window, I could see the eucalyptus trees' wild gestures punctuate the fog, the green, the gray, and nothing beyond it. You could look at or print or write something like it, something you could paint. When I woke, I put on Lucinda Williams. Eliot said, "Aren't you happy to spend your birthday with me?" I'll remember this with sadness, I thought, because of what a nice moment it was. Lucinda playing, the trees waving, tea. But I remember it now and feel happy. Outside, the air thicker. San Francisco blinked through the trees. Dana rolled cigarettes on Berkeley Hills Living. A couple in khakis and cashmere graced the cover. I was practically their neighbor, come to earn an English PhD for 5 years of stable health insurance to make the 2 friends I did. I can honestly say I learned nothing. Everything I learned in California, I learned from a plant. Cameron and Ari led ceremony at Cameron's north of Berkeley. You signed a waiver, and as the sun sank over his alpacas, you drank 3 cups of cactus tea, taking turns each time you drink to pray out loud at an altar they called a highly technical machine, able to take from you all that you didn't need. There was a feast after and instruction in the beginning where the good and bad news were always the same. The good and bad news is everyone is innocent. The good and bad news is there's nothing to fix. How do you know you're really praying? Because it's arresting. For the writers among us, eloquence won't be necessary. We're here to heal, not be Dostoevsky. The English department had fashioned itself after the kind of revelation the English department could no longer provide. This revelation was wrought by literature. It involved discomfort, confusion, recognition, surprise. The department wouldn't be moved. It got its discomfort from critical methodology, found recognition in new truths made of history. But ceremony had already taught me something about history I couldn't forget. Everyone messing each other up. They were all just doing their best. My ancestors did more than flee the czar, sell used clothes on Maxwell Street. The whole time they were praying me into being. That I live is the sign of their success. Cameron led meditation from the altar in the center of the circle. The waning daylight made my eyelids gauze it could shine through. Think of a time you felt unconditionally loved, he said. It doesn't matter who. We spent time living in that memory, and I wept the California light back out of my eyes. I had sudden, irrevocable access to so much love, I thought I might die. That was how ceremony taught you to be happy. Before, you thought all happiness was conditional. I couldn't eat. I leaned against a counter, asked Max if he remembered something we once did together with olive oil. He showed me a picture of his children. Someone passed me bread and I was asked to slice it. I don't know where a knife is. I took a knife out of the indicated drawer. I don't hate the program, I told Michael, who'd asked. It's something I've chosen. Then Michael came up to ask about the program. I don't hate it, I said. I just have to figure out how to be better. How's yours? Okay, he said. I'm ABD. Wow, I said. The knife, the bread, pure texture, the knife, pure control. I lamented privately that I was done cutting it. Tyler was stirring the soup I'd been asked to provide. I brought that, I said. Nice, he said. Yeah, I said. Then to Michael, I just have to figure out what I want. It's not in the books, Michael said. Yeah, I said. Then I added, maybe not for you. I am done cutting this bread, I announced. Someone arrived with a basket. Eve. She took the knife from my hand and put it in the sink. I stirred soup and focused on the aromatics of the steam. Isn't it funny? In a way, it seemed like sex to me. Sex with life, breath moving in and out of my body, the most unconditional love I'd had. Another night, I'd stood over a flame, asked Dana and Elliot which courses I should take. Elliot said I'd phrased it in an odd way, a moral register. I'd asked if taking such courses would be ill-advised. He told me I was obsessed with morality. Dana came as ever to my rescue, telling Elliot that he, in fact, was obsessed with morality for having characterized my neutral question as moral. In the center, we offered a last prayer before breaking our fast. Max shifted uncomfortably, or maybe it was me. He had been in recovery, surfing. I'd lie out on his giant beach towel reading Stevens, taking and then sending videos to my friends. One video included my breasts and sailing after lunch. Oh my God, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Eric wrote me. He had accidentally forwarded it to Chris. I had started with some silly words I don't remember now, felt watched and embarrassed, until I said, "I guess the bottom line is that I would like to fall in love with my life." I hugged Cameron on the way back to my seat. His wife usually joined for ceremony, but that afternoon she was pregnant with their baby. Cameron's prayers were always about her, about being more of what makes her happy. When we hugged, he said, "That's what I want too." I had wanted to get to the bottom line. There were so many people in the circle, it seemed important not to take up time, but I would get up and offer my prayer and sit back down and think of important things I hadn't said. It can't be, I consoled myself, that only prayers offered at this altar are answered. But I had never asked for more medicine than the minimum, and it seemed time to try something new. So I interrupted. It was just before Eve's turn. And I said, "Eve, is this okay?" And she was so obliging then, like a mother. In the next room, 2 couches faced each other. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a huge and terrifying external darkness. Cameron was eating a plate of steak and chicken and quinoa with currants and pizza and salad on one of the couches, talking to someone he knew beside him who was also eating, though with less vitality. I listened to them talk about buying property in Hawaii. I first heard of chakras in a physical theater intensive I took one summer in college. The teacher played vaguely tribal music while we explored them one by one, starting with the red one at the base of the pelvis, not touching that area, but moving from it, featuring it as the movement's driving force. As sometimes happened, I started crying and had to leave the room. That's how I met Sonia, who introduced me to Max when I lived with her after college in Topanga. We lay semi-supine in the hallway outside of our classroom. "Are you okay?" she asked after a while. "Yeah," I said. "Okay," she said, "then I'm going back in." When I went back in, I expected the teacher to congratulate me on the depth of my feeling. Instead, she said, "These are techniques you are learning for the sake of the theater. It's as important that you are able to inhabit a moment as it is that you're able to move on from it completely, without a trace." Elliot touched my face and told me I would live into my 90s. I ate some cream of mushroom soup Eve made. Michael drove home while I navigated, reciting all the poems I'd ever known to stay awake. He had to pull over more than once so I could do something Cameron and Ari called get well. I must have been holding on to ceremony, I thought, bending over a grate on the side of the highway, because here I am, letting it go. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Jessica, let's take a 5-minute break and come back with Jillian McManemin.
I'm going down to the railway station, gonna get a ticket to ride. Find a big fat lady with 2 or 3 kids and sit down by her side. Ride till the sun comes up and down around me about 2 or 3 times. Smoking cigarettes in the last seat, trying to hide my sorrow from the people I meet and get along with it all. Go down where people say y'all, sing a song with a friend, change the shape that I'm in, and get back in the game, start playing again. I'd like to stay, but I might have to go and start over again. Might go back down to Texas, or might go to somewhere that I've never been. Get up in the morning and go out at night, and I won't have to go home. Get used to being alone, change the words to the song, and start singing again. for answers to questions that I already know. I could build me a castle of memories just to have somewhere to go. Count the days and the nights that it takes to get back in the saddle again. Feed the pigeons some play, turn the night into day. Start talking again when I know what to say. Station, gonna get a ticket to ride. Find a big fat lady or two with your kids and sit down by her side. Ride till the sun comes up and down around me about 2 or 3 times. Smoking cigarettes in the last seat, trying to hide my sorrow from the people I need to get along with it all. Go down where people say, y'all, feed the pigeons and play. Turn the night into day. Start talking again, and I know what to say. Hey now, what gives? Don't think it goes like this. I don't think it goes like this. I can't live like this. I can't live like this. Can't live. Can't live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Segue reading series. We're so happy that you're here. If you're joining us on Zoom, please remember that we do ask for a $5 donation, which goes directly to the readers. So we're going to get started up again. Let me pull out my screen. My name is Lonely Christopher. I'm an editor at Roof Books, and I am introducing Jillian McManemin. So let's get started. It was an accident, a freak occurrence. Nobody meant for this to happen. The art did something it was not supposed to do. The art hurt somebody. No, the art killed them. What happens when good art goes bad? This is what Jillian McManemin is investigating in her work in progress study, Sculpture Kills, which she will be sharing with us tonight. Jillian is a writer and critic who pays attention to art objects that, quote, rebel against their makers, unquote, as well as people and societies who rebel against art objects. In 2020, McManemin founded the Toppled Monuments Archive, which is online if you want to look it up. Jillian distinguishes sculptures from monuments because, quote, monuments seek to eradicate critical thought or a form of propaganda, unquote. Different kinds of sculptures have been destroyed for different reasons throughout history. During the Roman Empire, damnatio memoriae was a form of systemic governmental sanction against institutional memory that took the form of removing physical references to deposed rulers. Oftentimes, these objects were overwritten in such a way that the viewer could understand an act of erasure and reconstitution has occurred. These acts of destruction resulted in the generation of new meaning and were carried out in a systematic way by artisans at the behest of the ruling class. I imagine the Romans had a more complex relationship to statues and idols than we do today, but the base intention remains the same, as outlined in the text, Negotiating Memory from the Romans to the 21st Century, quote, monuments and memorials are frequently placed by power holders in strategic locations to send out strong political messages and evoke deep feelings, aiming to reinforce the status quo, unquote. There are other reasons why art is suppressed and destroyed. There's literary censorship, there's religious iconoclasm, there's the historical revisionism that happens in the education system, and there's the grassroots destruction of Civil War monuments in the United States. A bad interpretation is that commemorative sculptures have inherent rights that are compromised when they are damaged. This position fails to understand that memorials are hegemonic impositions from the past onto the future. The fictive dream of a statue is that history owes it preservation. This stance completely disregards the impact of power differentials and conflicting political goals. The Black Lives Matter movement is made up of an oppressed minority group reacting to systemic violence. Black Lives Matter doesn't want to erase history, but expose and challenge its racist conclusions. The Confederate monuments dismantled in America were weapons targeting a local minority intended to threaten and control them. What can be done but to remove or destroy these instruments of war? With Sculpture Kills, McManemin reverses course, writing about sculptures that physically damage people rather than the other way around. Her examples include The Umbrellas by Christo and Jean-Claude and Blue Mustang by Luis Jimenez. Richard Serra's work has also turned deadly and ended lives. The Umbrellas was a sprawling installation of giant parasols in California and Japan. The trouble began when a storm hit the American version and turned one of the umbrellas into a projectile, which struck and crushed a woman. Consequently, the artists declared that the accident had ended the project, and in their rush to dismantle the installation in Japan, a worker was killed. Thus, the same work of art claimed 2 lives across 2 continents in a short amount of time. The utopic, feel-good, blockbuster budgeted, I'd like to buy the world a Coke sentimentality of the umbrellas, and the whole Christo and Jean-Claude shtick in general, is at grim odds with the destruction wrought by the project's physical reality when it failed under the pressure of natural forces. Blue Mustang is the creepy, totemic, discolored horse with glowing eyes rearing up in front of the Denver airport. Jimenez died while working on the sculpture when part of it fell on him. Jillian writes about, quote, contact, evisceration, sculpture's most extreme temporal consequence, unquote. In her study of sculptures that kill, Jillian uses two techniques that shouldn't work so well, but do. This is not a critique, but first, the historical writing and art criticism is interspersed with memoir, and perhaps unrelatedly, in writing about the deadly actions of inanimate objects, she occasionally anthropomorphizes them, which is counterintuitive from an academic perspective, and yet somehow provides the right attack, so to speak, which allows for a system of meaning and mystery to form around senseless accidents. She doesn't treat the objects as capable of independent thought, but of independent action, movement that displaces the object from the narrative of authorial control. These are sculptures that can be said to misbehave, which is fertile ground for Jillian, who expands the scope of her project by relating these fatalities to her own personal disasters, including an electrical fire which destroyed the Brooklyn artist's loft she called home, could have killed her had she been there, and left her facing a $70,000 lawsuit from the building's owner's insurance company. The harrowing intensity of her misfortune really does connect with her subject, even if going the autobiographical route is a risky gambit. Then there is the slowly unfolding disaster of trying to be an artist living in this city, and the daily challenges and indignities we bear just to survive and have a shot at fulfilling a creative career while things always seem to be collapsing around us. Jillian writes, quote, "The only way to get to pure material and beyond any illusion is for sculpture to fail," unquote. She moves the focus away from the creative intention of the artist and places it on the material construction of an object and the labor required to fabricate and install it. Regarding Richard Serra, she notes, quote, "It's often assumed I will be writing as a woman making an indictment, and that Serra is my evidence personified, when really what I'm trying to do, sometimes crudely and even absurdly, is to regard objects in another light, to see the accidents as object autonomy, to create a space to consider an artwork with its movements, so that how a sculpture moves in the world becomes integral to its context," unquote. It is a different way of looking at art that can be applied fruitfully even to objects which can't be said to have murdered their creators or innocent bystanders. About Sculpture Kills, the author explains, quote, "This book is my arena. It doesn't thrash against shock, it slips in, it's washed into it, the writing rots alongside material, it dissolves the notion of forever, it's suspicious of memory and says fuck you to nostalgia. It's never in stone, and I imagine one day will be at the bottom of a river." Please welcome Jillian McManemin.
Is that good? Thank you so much. That was wonderful and hilarious. I just wanted to mention that an excerpt is available in Ursula magazine, the new issue, number 9, and it's a gorgeous magazine if you haven't checked it out yet. I'm going to be reading from the second chapter. They're all organized kind of thematically, and this one is called Earth. We drove north, winding off the George Washington Bridge and onto the tree-lined Palisades Parkway. I felt like I was sharing something with them being on this highway together. They were driving and I was in the passenger seat. My head spun with new love as we traced the curves of the highway and the trees got thicker and thicker. I grew up in Jersey and drove on these roads often as a teenager, stoned with friends or going upstate. The PIP and the Turnpike are important to me because of their familiarity. They bookended both ordinary days and dramatic experiences. In terms of art history, the New Jersey Turnpike could be loosely credited for the minimalist movement, sparked by the drive that Tony Smith took when the roads weren't finished. He took his students with him and during the dark night drive experienced endless lines and rhythmic punctuation, the landscape of flats, something dead and alive, the end and beginning of an art. I'd continue north on the train so I could see my friends and finally visit Opus 40. I want to get closer to the instances where sculptures have killed. Opus 40 is a bluestone sculpture in Saugerties, New York. 100 miles from the city in the Catskill Mountains. The sculpture spans 6 acres and is built on an abandoned bluestone quarry. Harvey Fite purchased the quarry and surrounding land in 1938, thinking it would be a fantastic source of material. At the time, Harvey made stone and wood figurative sculpture. He initially began work on Opus 40 with the idea to build an environment to stage his figurative works. Before Harvey was a sculptor, he had a career in the theater. Sculptural stars needed a stage to make them shine larger. As the daily arrangement of bluestone detritus in the quarry progressed, Fite realized that what he was building had a life of its own, with its own sculptural properties, and it became its focus. The result of this arranging is a sprawling maze of terraces, ramps, vistas, ponds, passageways, staircases, and walls made through the process of dry key construction. Stones are carefully fit together to evenly distribute pressure that holds form together without having to rely on concrete and other joining methods. This process rests on understanding how shapes fit together, of being able to see how to fit a shape into another shape, being able to remember an entire network of shapes and places that shapes can go, to create perfect shapes that perfectly fit into others so that all of the shapes can hold weight and make something strong. It's about the balance of knowing what you are making, yet letting what you make determine how it's made, a balance of brute force and trust. Tad Richards, Harvey Fite's stepson, calls to tell me that the gate of Opus 40 is open. I drive slowly onto the dirt road. This is where he lives. Tad is 79 and he moved into the house when he was 4 years old. He waits at the door and greets me in a red Opus 40 t-shirt and pale button down. Tad and I go into the hallway and take a right into the space with chairs and couches. This was Harvey's studio. I take a chair and Tad the couch. His ink drawings are on the table in the space, piles of books and some of Harvey's sculptures. His dog, Sydney, comes over for pets throughout our conversation. We start talking immediately before I get to see the work, but midway he cuts me off and tells me to go outside to experience it, so I do. I enter Opus 40 cautiously. Some of the bluestone shifts when you walk on it. Bluestone is not blue, really. It's gray and laced with rust color. The sculpture invites me in nice and slow. I slide toward the promise of shade, a cool curve of slate gray under the protective mountain. I give in, I get looser, I get less worried where I step. I give to the embrace and start with my fingertips. Harvey smooths all these stones with his hands. I run my fingers on them, their curves and their rough parts fitting together. I'm swallowed by the sculpture. I completely inhabit it. I'm small and organic, and my body is held by it. The way I walk is determined by it. The parts where I'm careful or bold shape me to suit you. The sculpture shows me vistas, wet ponds and views, thick parts, salty parts, deposits of energy that have been left behind from the wild party Harvey hosted into the dark mountain night. I want to understand the trust these stones have standing up by pressing themselves on each other, leaning with even weight distribution, balancing acts on top of a solid core. I want to know the sculpture like I want to know my lover. I want to tear it open, strip it to crawl inside, peel off the layers, and watch the sculpture stand in the morning light as I make coffee with no pants on. I want to fill the sculpture with myself. I want it to recognize me. I want to wrestle it down to the ground. I want it everywhere. I want it to stare back at me as I'm shaking on top of it. I want it to mirror my feelings of how much I want to conquer it so it's even. Introduce me to your face. Take me somewhere calm. Show me love. Cradle my head in the palm of your hands and trace my face with your fingertips. I can feel the moment Harvey decided that the stage was a sculpture. I can feel that thrill, the one of finally recognizing and naming what you've been doing all along. I've loved you all along. That kind of sight feels so good. I lay down in the quarry bed. Love is knocking me out. When Harvey got tired of arranging bluestone, he gathered tools that the quarrymen left behind. He converted one of the barns on the property into the quarrymen's museum. The tools were arranged just as meticulously as Opus 40 was. They were all nailed to the walls according to their shape, like a metal jigsaw puzzle. I didn't understand what most of these tools did, neither did Tad. Some of them were so figurative, it was hard to believe that they weren't sculpture. They looked like faces, bones, hands. David Smith collected objects like this as well. Seeing how many tools were left behind gave me the impression that the quarrymen left in a rush, that they abandoned the site, and that they did so by running off into the night, by throwing their tools down in anger and stomping off. Quarry work is strip mining. Opus 40 was a series of explosions before it was a sculpture. Harvey worked with the miner's detritus, the little bits and shards left behind, and all of the bluestones that were not marketable. I could feel the quarrymen with their shirts off in the sun, the endless noise of metal striking stone, of eardrums being blown and rocks flying through the air. I could smell the dynamite smoke. I can feel that there were broken bones here. I can feel Harvey's anger. In the process of making anything, there comes failure of design. I could feel his anger for all of the times that the winch wouldn't work and all of the times that the walls he started to construct fell. I circle the weight of it all and get dizzy, like when you're a child and you stare at the sky and spin until you fall into the dirt. The wavy world makes more sense than a still one. I trace my steps with the sculpture. I'm thinking alongside the sculpture. I'm with it. I'm committed to going everywhere in it. I want to understand which way it winds, why it winds which way it does, wondrous, wild thing. As I pressed up against one of the walls, a shard of blue stone caught my hair and kept a strand. Opus 40 is an archive for all who have visited it. Our bodies and our experience of our bodies continue to be the subject of this sculpture, even when a work is made of several hundred tons of earth. Opus 40 both embraces and evades the classification of an earthwork. The sculpture was included in Probing the Earth Contemporary Land Projects at the Hirshhorn, which acted as an official declaration of the work as a precursor of the movement. In the catalog, it's noted it was highly unusual for a work of this scale to be taken on without assistance, without machines, contractors, or workers. It was also unusual for the land not to be immediately considered to be a site for an earthwork. It was seen as it was previously, a place to mine materials from. If Harvey Fight was a precursor for the earthwork movement, artists like Walter de Maria, Michael Heiser, and Robert Smithson were emblematic. Smithson's spiral jetty being one of the most famous. A black basalt and limestone jetty approximately 15 feet wide, spiraling into the Great Salt Lake in Utah, at once appearing to expand while collapsing in on itself, petering into a small nothing. Spiral jetty is somewhat of a household name as far as contemporary large-scale sculpture is concerned. And in this way, it's related to Christo, but unlike Christo, Fight, and Smithson and the other artists of the movement used actual earth, bluestone, rock, and soil, rather than inserting art objects and structures into the land. They let the artwork emerge from what was already there. While Harvey Fight had a humanistic outlook on his work and was consumed by the notion of building something, Smithson was consumed by the notion of entropy, depreciation, the undoing, an inability to restore energy, planetary drain, and the desire to display erosion. He wrote about entropy for his project, The Monuments of Passaic. In the half performative, half archaeological work, Smith took a bus from Port Authority to Passaic, New Jersey, a nondescript suburban town where he asked the question, has Passaic replaced Rome as the eternal city? Smithson got off the bus to view the first monument, the 8th Street Bridge. that connects Passaic and Bergen County. It's an industrial bridge. I've seen it before. But what Smithson saw was different than my memory, as the structure was fixed multiple times from its original 1915 construction. Several repairs took place after Smithson made the trip and published his essay. Smithson's earthworks, unlike the bridge, are not fixed or preserved. They are rather left in the elements to ruin. He began to photograph the bridge. The artist, in a gesture, both spatial, physiological, and even somehow emotional because of its truth and impossibility, inhabits the camera as he shoots the landscape. He's only able to view the landscape and bridge and river through punctuated static shots, capturing fragmented stillness and never anything whole. He suggests that the bridge could be called the monument of dislocated directions. Other monuments reveal themselves, like concrete abutments supporting a new highway structure, pipes, smokestacks, and other industrial configurations. Smithson views the various machines left off on a Sunday as extinct mechanical dinosaurs, surrounded by pre- and post-World War II houses that mirrored themselves into colorlessness. The artist gets drawn into, yet ends up rebuffing the lure of anthropomorphizing the landscape. He speaks of ruins in reverse, of the holes and vacancies that the suburbs possess, a promise of a future, what passes as a future, a utopia minus a bottom, how when things are built, they're already dead, that there is no past to collapse and do away with, or even a past to fight for, no base to modify or rebel from, nothing to reject. So the promise of futurity is stasis, is a snapshot. This is the opposite of the romantic ruin, because buildings don't fall into ruin after they are built, but rather rise into ruin before they build. Parking lots become flat monuments. I recall the flat works of Carl Andre, the slabs we step on. If the romantic ruin is a symbol of the earth taking back power, wrapping something back into sublime decay, then the monuments of Passaic evade this comforting inevitable. Smithson goes on to describing a planet very much like the planet we inhabit now, of immense and rapid catastrophe, suggesting the sudden dissolution of entire continents, the drying up of oceans, where time turns metaphor into things, and this limitless blank expansion that equaled timelessness through the false mirror of eternity would collapse the planet and obviously be the death of us. Opus 40 can withstand an enormous amount of environmental force. During Hurricane Sandy, the roof of Tad's house blew off entirely. The 9-ton monolith remained. I'm sure some bluestone shifted around, especially the in-progress walls where the sculpture fades into the meadow. As soon as the monolith was secured into its position, Harvey stepped back to look at it and gave way to abstraction. He realized the stone was perfect without any more intervention. He decided to move all of his figurative works out of Opus 40. It was no longer a stage. He was not only arranging a natural environment, he was organizing a site of industry, a site that holds scores of injuries and injustices having to do with labor. A site of not being paid a fair wage. A work site that was active only at the dawn of modern labor laws. Smithson also built and conceived of many artworks within abandoned quarries. He became fascinated by strip mining, being in between ecology and industry. He even bought a small island in Maine that was intended to be a site for an earthwork, but the artist moved on from utilizing that landscape because of its too picturesque quality. Explosions make sense to me. The idea is that huge stones were lifted out of the ground and brought to the city by boat. Even raising the monolith is something that I have a clear idea of. But the quarryman's tools that could rest in my hand, these slight iron curves that look like a face, a body, a profile, I can't picture how they could have been used, but I often think of the worker. When I was a child, I was dizzy laying in the grass, and my father called me into his gray van. we had to go to a shop. His company name was on the side in white vinyl letters, Clear Image Glass. I sit in the back of the van on a toolbox. Panes of glass were strapped to either side, and I balanced myself between them. I loved these rides because I knew they were dangerous. My hands white-knuckled on the toolbox. We know they are dangerous together. I understand love and fun with the smell of oil, metal, and smoke. I stared at the road and prayed the glass wouldn't fall. I always wondered if it was his work that gave my father cancer. I get up as the morning transitions into a hot summer afternoon, and the dew has evaporated and my dizzy feeling is gone. Tad appeared at one end of the stone passageway. I don't know how he found me. He said he had to go into town and he offered me a ride. I asked if I could stay. Of course, he said, but I didn't want him to leave. I had more questions. I feel deflated in some way. I came here to absorb something that I realize is entirely abstract. I thought being here would fill me with something, fill a lack, or provide an understanding, a sensory undoing, making connection seem more possible. It's true, though, that I haven't gotten to the exact spot of the artist's death. Maybe that will be the thing. Opus 40 took 37 years of continuous, strenuous manual labor. Harvey Feit had initially estimated 40 years of labor, which gave the sculpture its name, but its estimation was cut short. In addition to the ever-expanding structure of the sculpture, the grounds of Opus 40 need constant maintenance. Harvey did not shy away from this type of work. He often mowed the lawn with a tractor, circling the sculpture and surrounding grassy lawns and meadows. Harvey reached the edge of the quarry, almost done with his work. He tried to put the tractor in reverse, but somehow it shot forward. It launched his body into the air. Harvey hit the ground first, flat on his back. And after falling 12 feet, the tractor fell on top of him. It cracked his chest and caved in his heart. I need to find the lip of the sculpture where Harvey fell from. I search for the lip and get turned around and redirected back to the central monolith. Harvey's friend who helped him raise the monolith was the one to find his body after the fall. I think I found a lip on the outskirts where the stone is less arranged. It looks in progress. Walls taper off to shorter stone fences, but as I approach it, I realize there's no lip here, no sudden drop, only a sunlit clearing. I circle the meadow. Mud slicked the grass floor from the rain the night before. There's a new path into the maze. Stone fences rise, and I'm fully enveloped in the sculpture. I look left. This is where it must have been. Shards of blue stone frozen in a cascade. It looks to be about 12 feet high. I walk in the mud, and every step I take, butterflies and dragonflies rise. My footsteps disturb them. Their wings beat loudly. I've never heard a sound like this before. There are so many of them. Soft, organic helicopters fly around my body, and small creatures leap into the safety of bright green algae and muddy pools. Sculpture is always parallel to the body. Stone was carved to look like flesh. Whenever I love someone, I imagine them dying. I think this is why I love sculpture so much. It's comforting to love something that's built to last forever. I walk towards what looks like a lip, a drop, but it's only a step. I keep coming back to the same points in the piece. Did the Feits feel trapped by the sculpture, its demands? I think of the burden of care. Opus 40 was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2001. I want to understand the emotional impact of running the estate of your dead husband's or father's work, and I want to understand its comforts. Smithson's earthworks, on the other hand, are left to the elements to hurtle back to the prehistoric. Whether we regard Opus 40 as finished is linked to whether we regard the sculpture as living. Harvey organized an ecosystem. But Opus 40 is finished, and in a way it is as complete as it ever would have been. It was the product of Feit's vision and only could have stopped with his death. The event of death and then the unfurling of what grief creates. How far you let your body sink into it or not. The shape of resistance. Thank you.
Let's hear it again for Jessica and Jillian. And we hope to see you next week for Selena Sue and Laura Hendrickson.